llama Shaya, la mujer. No, pero yo tengo que escucharlo completo. Vaya. Me avisas cuando ya estés haciendo el chat. Ok. Pero me dijo que
a little bit more closer to the group so the family can have somewhere to sit down. We're going to need some of those chairs. Yeah. I need to know the speakers.
Test. 1, 2. Test. 1, 2. So make sure when it's time to.
Silence their phones. Give me just a second. Computers, volume off, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Pero esta no, ¿verdad? La que no.
For adults, right?
Option up to.
everyone. We'll get started in a few moments. There'll be two speakers, or three speakers. Today will go first. Afterwards, we're not taking a ton of questions. We've given a lot of folks sit downs the last few weeks, so we think we've covered that. But you will have a few opportunities, but not a ton. There's too many folks in here. Yes.
for 365 days a year, that's what they do. I said that out of all the days that we pick, yeah. 6, which is yours. Somebody said to me, yeah, really? And November 26th
have some family members stand on this side as well. That would be great. And just the closer, the better.
Scone, the Los Angeles County DA. Let's listen to a decision that he could make about their future.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And before I begin speaking, I want to also introduce some other people that are here with me, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right because I've seen handwritten part of it. But I have Ana Maria Barat, Jose Menendez, Jose Menendez, and niece Karen Bender-Molen, and Katie's niece. They're all here with us. Also with us here is Brock Lunsford. He's the Assistant Head Deputy for the Post-Litigation Conviction Unit, and Nancy Cervier, who is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the Resentencing Unit. Let me begin by telling you that this is a case where we've had many people in this office spend a great deal of time reviewing the case. I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were molested. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately and that they were in fact molested. I have to tell you that after a very careful review of all the arguments that were made for people on both sides of this equation, I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow. What that means in this particular case is that we're going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed and that they will be sentenced for murder, which, because there are two murders involved, that will be 50 years to life. However, because of their age, under the law, since they were under 26 years of age at the time that these crimes occurred, they will be eligible for parole immediately. The teams that have worked on this, on the resentencing side of it, have spent literally probably hundreds of hours by now looking at this case. These cases were originally presented on the habeas side of it, which I'll explain in a moment what that is, last year, and then the request for a prosecutor-initiated resentencing occurred earlier this year. And there have been people in this office working in these cases from the very beginning, as well as many other cases that we have. The reason why I'm here today and why I came in front of all of you about 10 days ago is because there was a more recent documentary about the case that again brought a tremendous amount of public attention. And we know there have been other documentaries, so this is not the first, this is a more recent one. And frankly, our office got flooded with requests for information. And even though this case was already scheduled to be heard in late November, I decided to move this forward because, quite frankly, we did not have enough resources to handle all the requests. And one of the things that I thrive to do in this office is to be very transparent in everything that we do. In this case, we review the prison files. And you have to understand that the way the process works, when you're talking about a resentencing under the law, it really focuses not necessarily on what the original crimes were, but it focuses on, has the person been rehabilitated, number one? And number two, can they be released safely into the community? Under that rubric, since I've been in office, we have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. Only 4 have reoffended. If that was a regular recidivism rate in this country, we would be the safest nation in the world, but we know that it's not. In fact, somewhere between 40 and 50% of the people that go to prison reoffend and get rearrested. And that's why we have so many problems. However, when you look at the case of the Menendez brothers, you see 2 very young people. One was 19 and the other one was 21 when they committed these horrible acts. And I want to underline, they were horrible acts. There is no excuse for murder. And I will never imply that what we're doing here is to excuse that behavior, because even if you get abused, the right path is to call the police, seek help. But I understand also how sometimes people get desperate. We often see women, for instance, that have been battered for years, and sometimes they will murder their abuser out of desperation. And I do believe that the brothers were subjected to a tremendous amount of dysfunction in the home and molestation. But they went to prison for life without the possibility of parole, which meant that certainly under the law at that time, they had no hopes of ever getting out. They could have done what many other people do, which is basically said, you know what, I'm here for the rest of my life, so I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to misbehave, I'm going to join gangs, I'm going to live the life of the prison. But they never did that. To the contrary, even though they didn't think that they would ever be left free, they engaged in a different journey. A journey of redemption and a journey of rehabilitation. And often the people that begin their journey of rehabilitation and redemption in prison is often very internal. And what they do, and one of our lawyers pointed out this today, is usually the path is people try to further their education, do things for self-improvement, which the brothers have done, by the way. But it's more unique or less usual, I guess, when people not only do that, but they also begin to engage in ways to make life for others better. And in this case, the brothers have been doing so for a very long time, creating groups to deal with how to address untreated trauma, creating groups to deal with other inmates that have physical disabilities and may be treated differently. Even in one case, Lyle negotiating for other inmates as to the conditions that they live under during prison. And all this was done by 2 young people, now they're not as young, that had no hopes of ever getting out of prison. They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly. I must underline, however, this case will be filed in court tomorrow. The final decision will be made by the judge. Court has to agree with my conclusion that they deserve to be resentenced. It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing their resentencing. And they have a right to do so. And we encourage those that disagree with us that will be present in court opposing their resentencing. And they have a right to do so. And we encourage those that disagree with us to speak, and the court is the appropriate place to do it. We certainly feel we're very sure not only that the brothers have rehabilitated and that they will be safe to be reintegrated in our society, but that they have paid their dues, not only for the crimes that they committed, but because of all the other things they have done to improve the life of so many others. So, again, we will be filing for resentencing tomorrow. We're seeking that they would be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, as opposed to life without the possibility of parole, which is they currently have. That means that they would have 50 years to life because there were 2 murders. But because of the age upon which they were convicted, under 26, under current law, that means they're eligible for youthful parole. I think there is also important to have some introspection today, because I think that often, for cultural reasons, we don't believe victims of sexual assault, whether they're women or whether they're men. We saw in our first trial, which, by the way, they were tried twice. The first trial hung, meaning the jury could not come to a conclusion, and in fact, about half of the jury wanted to convict them of manslaughter, which, if that were have been the case, they would have been off prison a long time ago. And then there was a second trial, and then they were convicted of murder with special circumstances, which led to the life without the possibility of parole. But it's salient to understand that our own implicit and sometimes explicit bias around sexual abuse and sexual assaults often leads us to severe injustices in our community. And I want to speak to those that are victims of sexual assault now, whether you're a man or a woman. Know that we're here for you. If you're a victim of sexual assault in this community, and by that we're talking about LA County, not just LA City, you can come for help. Whether you're prepared to prosecute or not, we will be here for you. We have services for you. And if you're prepared to move forward with the prosecution, we will evaluate it as we do any other case. And if we believe that the evidence is there to present a credible case in front of a jury that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we would proceed accordingly. You do not have to suffer alone. You don't have to keep it to yourself. And help is here unconditionally. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish because I know there's tremendous amount of interest from the Spanish media, and I know that there are going to be other speakers today.
There you have it, an extraordinary development coming to us from Los Angeles at this hour. George Gascon, the Los Angeles County District Attorney, coming before the cameras there in Los Angeles to declare that he believes, and he will file this tomorrow, that the brothers, the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric Menendez, should be resentenced 3 decades after the murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. They received life without the possibility of parole. He believes, and it will be his suggestion, that they are resentenced to life with the possibility of parole because there were 2 murders that would mean 50 years to life. And given their ages at the time, 19 and 21 years old, that means they could be released immediately, given the time served, given the fact that they have spent nearly 35 years in prison. He did, at the very beginning of his news conference moments ago, acknowledge that within the DA's office, there is not complete agreement on this. He said there are those in the DA's office who argued that they should not be released and that they did not believe that these boys were molested, in his words. The DA went on to say he has reviewed the evidence with a large team within that DA's office and that he is convinced that they did suffer sexual abuse at the hands of their father during those years that led up to those murders. He made it clear in his own words that that was not an excuse for murder. He said that victims of sexual abuse should reach out to authorities immediately. But he did say, given the time that they have served, nearly 35 years in prison, that he believes they have paid their dues. Let's bring in our national correspondent, Matt Gutman, live outside court there. And Matt, he indicated he's going to file this tomorrow. The judge will take this up as early as tomorrow.
It's possible that this could move very quickly, David, but there are a couple of steps that this does have to go through. So obviously, the judge has to agree with the DA's assertion that these men no longer pose a threat to society, that if they are released and put on parole, they won't harm anybody else. And he has to agree to his view of the legal aspects of releasing them to or resentencing them to a life term, and then having a youthful offender mitigation. Anybody under 26 years can get out after a number of years. But he also has to send this to the parole board, and they also have to agree. And then after that, there is the chance that Governor Newsom might weigh in here, and he might not approve it. So they're not out of the woods yet, and certainly not out of prison just yet. It could take a few more days or even weeks or even longer, David.
And as the DA suggested there, in talking about those within the office who don't agree with his decision, he said as part of this ongoing process, the argument both for and against this, that he does expect that there will be people from inside his office who come forward. And he said not only does he expect that, he welcomes it.
Yeah, this has been a massively divisive issue, not just in the public, which is what has drawn so much interest. And David, I can tell you that there are people who've been watching this on TikTok and Netflix, out on the street, camped out here, waiting for this announced. But it's also been divisive inside his own office, massively so. There are people who remind other attorneys, members of the public, that these two young men purchased these weapons knowingly. They fired at least 12 rounds into their parents, including killing their mother at almost point-blank range. It's unclear why they had to do that if she wasn't physically the person sexually abusing them, that they then went on a spending spree, that they called in and staged the 911 call, that this was an absolute murder. There is no denying that, and they question whether these two not so young men anymore should be released back into the public. The question of whether they remain a threat to the public, I think is less of an important one at this point. It seems that from what Gascon and their defense attorney says, they have been model prisoners in the 35 years that they've been in the system, David.
Matt Gutman, our thanks to you outside the courthouse there in Los Angeles. And as Matt points out, there are many who do believe that this obviously was a horrendous murder, that they should not be released. On the flip side, you heard the DA say that this was in fact murder and that they should be resentenced based on the fact that there should be life with the possibility of parole. And again, that would be 50 years to life. And given the time that they have served and their age at the time, that they would be eligible for parole. He said that they have paid their due. I do want to bring in our legal contributor, trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer, also with us. And Brian, I was struck by what the DA said at the end in sort of an appeal to anyone who might be watching who is the victim of sexual abuse. He said, you don't have to prosecute, but do come forward. There is help for you. And he said, I do believe, and this was to the greater audience at large here, that we need to be introspective in this moment and recognize that within our culture, particularly.
Thank you to District Attorney George Gascon for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that the truth will finally be heard and that Lyle and Eric can begin to heal from the trauma of their past. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
I believe Jose Menendez is going to say a few words.
This is the niece of Kitty Menendez,
I'm sorry.
Joan Vandermolen.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming. We are here today because District Attorney Gascon has taken
as it was today. And I think as we see our understanding of sexual abuse, reporting that type of abuse later on, and how it affects the different genders, I think the prosecutor's doing the right thing of opening it up to the public and say, if you are a victim of this, come forward. We will not be bound by stereotypes or belief decades old.
Brian Buckmeyer with us here as well. Brian, our thanks to you as always, and our thanks to Matt Gutman there in Los Angeles. Again, our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. I'll be back with the entire team for World News Tonight. Again, the breaking headline from Los Angeles at this hour, the DA now recommending that Eric and Lyle Menendez be resentenced to life with the possibility of parole, which would mean, if agreed upon by the judge and by the parole board, that they could be released immediately. I'm David Muir in New York. I'll see you a short time from now for World News Tonight. For many of you in the East, we return you to your local news. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.